Hi, everyone. I'm Phyllis Klein, and this is Poets in Conversation. Welcome. Tonight, we have two amazing local Bay Area poets, Renée Schell and Erin Redfern. Poets who met about 10 years ago when Renée was a featured reader and Erin was in the audience. Erin was attracted to Renée's poetry, but it also became apparent to both of them that they had a lot in common. Both have PhDs, Renée in German and Erin in English, and neither one went into academia. They automatically understood all that meant. Both are natural teachers. Renée has just finished 7 years teaching elementary school, and Erin tutors and teaches poetry privately, with classes coming up in the near future, I hope. They both like to write in forms like sonnets and I think sestinas and others, and hopefully we'll talk about that some. Renée has learned a lot from Erin and vice versa. Erin was exiting her public school teaching job when Renée was entering, and Erin helped her a lot that first year. Renée has taken Erin's poetry classes, and I've taken one too, and I want to take many more. I'm going to let their poetry speak for itself. Renée writes about her greed for words, and Renée about rhythm and Beethoven in the desert. We're going to go traveling, learning ways to fall, ways to be dead, and of course, so much more. Usually I read a poem of mine at the beginning, but we're going to be creative today, I think, in a lot of ways. So I'm going to read my poem in the middle of Renée's reading. So I'm going to introduce Renée now, and then we'll go from there. So it is my delight to introduce Renée M. Schell. Her debut collection, Overtones, was published in 2022 by Touraine Poetry Press. Her poetry appears in New Verse News, Catamaran, Literary Reader, Literary Mama, Naugatuck River Review, and other journals. In 2015, she was lead editor for the anthology Afterlife, Poems and Stories of the Dead. That sounds so wonderful. But I don't mean, anyway, you know what I mean. Poetically wonderful. She holds a PhD in German studies and taught for 7 years at a Title I elementary school in San Jose, California. Renée shares her home with her family, her 4 cats, and the spirit of Beethoven. So thank you so much for being here, Renée, and I'm so looking forward to your reading.
Oh, thank you so much, Phyllis. And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this poetry event. I will be reading some poems from my book, published by Touraine Poetry Press. And I want to acknowledge and thank Wong Vu, the editor, for putting out this beautiful book of poems. I also wanted to acknowledge the artist, Lacey Bryant. She let us use her painting for the cover, and I just love it. You can find her work online, Lacey Bryant. I want to thank Phyllis for hosting this amazing series and inviting me and Erin to read Poets in Conversation. Phyllis has a great book out herself. It's called The Full Moon Herald. And it's a wonderful book published by Grayson Books, and you can see here it won a prize. So check it out. Really great poems in there. So thank you very much, Phyllis. So I have written quite a few poems about Beethoven and his music, and I'll read a few of those that are in the book to start us off. So for this first one, I imagined what it might be like to be a young girl during Beethoven's time, a girl with musical talent and a good ear, but no opportunities to develop them. So this is called To a Housemaid with Perfect Pitch, 1802. 16th notes whip through the air like bats at twilight. You capture the strange harmony Calm its wings with roughened fingers, slip it into your sleeve. While the composer plays, you imagine yourself lying across the keyboard, compressing quarter notes into your lungs, his fingers weaving through your ribs, broken chords emerging from your bones. Your 19-year-old body plays the song of a hot iron pressing the clothing of others, plays the ballad of porcelain cups too delicate to be stacked, plays the lament of fingers swelling in soap and hot water. The composer, his face pockmarked like yours, moist with sweat like yours. How many years has he played that the notes flow like blood? If you stopped work today, played through all the breakfasts and teas to come, could you ever match his hours? You hear the high notes escape out the window again. They catch in the top leaves of the beeches, the birches. You pluck remembered allegro, remembered cantabile from the air, place them next to cups drained of their tea. You carry the tray laden with decrescendo and half notes from the room. It's not heavy. So Beethoven loved being out in nature, like many of us do, and he often went for walks in the woods. And so one time I found myself wondering, if he were here, where would he go walking? And I thought of the different landscapes and thought, what would he think of the desert, California desert? So this is called Beethoven in the Desert. India ink, black as lack of hearing, spills. Trim the quill, dip it, listen for the oasis of sound. You learn the word mirage, new world read at dawn, the repeat at dusk. Hatch the notes in a pewter cup before they fall to ground. Strange, raging sun pounds its drum, sears your skin red, relentless. Small mammals scurry into bolt holes. You envy their rodent ears, the way they hear the short song of predator wings. In the desolate air, you yearn even for the squeak and squawk of the orchestra tuning. A small movement in the Mojave, saguaro, Joshua tree, ocotillo. Spiny arms conduct without a score. And now a final Beethoven poem for you. I've always been fascinated by this quality in his music that makes you keep listening, or at least makes me keep listening, right? If I get home, I'm parked in the driveway and there's something playing, I can't turn it off just because I'm home. I'd have to listen. And there's never a stopping point because of just the control, I guess, that the music has over me. So I wanted to write something about this sense of being spellbound by the music. And that kind of music, I mean, that feeling, it might be different for everybody. For me, it's Beethoven. So this is called Early Beethoven Sonata. Even the Duchess with the peacock feather in her hat ceases to fan herself, ceases to make eyes at the young gallant 2 seats over, and is obliged to feel the new harmonies thrust their way into the whalebone of her corset. Compelled to watch those hands dance their dance upon the narrowest stage of white and black keys, she hears the murmurs at the strange beginning, but captive in her décolleté, she is driven with the others to hear what he wants her to hear, as if he bore a whip, as if he chained them to their chairs and laid a fire beneath them. They are forced to inhale the vapor while the key of C minor changes state and dissipates, diluting the oxygen in the room. So this next poem went through several iterations, all of them very different. I don't mean some versions. I mean, like, we started completely over several times. Because I originally wanted to respond when there was this backlash when Naomi Osaka withdrew from the press conferences around the French Open a couple of summers ago, right, the tennis star. I tried to write a modified sonnet. That didn't work. I wrote some free verse. That didn't quite work. And then I was just thinking about more about mental health in general, right? That's why she had withdrawn. She talked about her struggles with anxiety and the fact that these press conferences just triggered this anxiety for her. So I was thinking about mental health. And I also, so I dedicated it to her, but also Simone Biles, who at the time I was writing this and sending it off, had just withdrawn from the individual all round at the Tokyo Olympics, the Olympic Games in Tokyo. So this poem I ended up dedicating to both of them. It's called Poem with Repeated Word. What if we all practiced saying no? What if every street corner had a microphone for the practice of saying no? No, I won't keep my mouth shut. No, I won't choose between food and rent. No, I won't use my body as an ATM to cross a border. The no's would ring out, streaming like ribbons up and over each other, weaving an ornate shawl, a handmade rebozo, a silk sari, a secondhand scarf, a torn skirt. They'd hear no in Amarillo, no in the pueblos of Mexico, no in Iowa, no in the middle of nowhere, no in County Kerry, no in the Sahara, no in Angola, no in Afghanistan. The microphones would pick up the tiniest no, the no of infants, the no of 8-year-olds, the no of a child separated from her mother at Fort Bliss. How famous do you have to be for your no to be heard? Okay. I think it's fitting that Phyllis calls this series Poets in Conversation because that's how these next poems were written. It's a set of 3 poems written in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So Phyllis wrote her poem first and sent it to our mutual friend and fabulous poet, Kathy Less. Then Kathy wrote her poem in response to Phyllis's poem, but same topic. And then I got both poems and wrote my response to Kathy's. So Phyllis will read her poem first, and then part of Kathy's, and then I'll pick up Kathy's and read my own.
Thanks, Renee. And I just want to say that, I love writing letter poems, epistolary poems. So this poem is a letter to Renee and Kathy. And I was just thinking about, I don't know, it's been over a year now that this war has been going on.
Yeah.
So it felt really important for me to reread this poem and remember the feelings that this war engenders. Mm-hmm. Dear friends, I send my love this spring as every day a new trauma comes to bury us just as we climb out of yesterday's avalanche. Even here in the flatlands, sidewalks seem to turn into wet clay, our feet leaving prints that suck my shoes into glue like cement. My heart muscles out its love to your hearts as I struggle to take a walk. My heart muscles out its love to your hearts as I struggle to take a walk. No way to avoid those cruel neighborhoods of bad news. How bad news molders in the streets of tar and disappointment. Flat tires and tire irons, so easy to weaponize. Trees blighted, only crows left. Love watches a plague of human heartlessness trying to destroy it. Love begs for combat boots, stands on the fire escape outside its tenement of low-income love fires. I say, let them burn. To kindle what is lovely, I send you them, the embers. Okay, and that's thank you. And then this is part of Kathy Less's, and then Renee will take over. Whose spring? Lately, I wonder for whose sake the flowers bud, the trees open. I watch the oak tree 2 houses away, how it plumes wider a little more each day, its pent-up exhilaration to burst forth, readiness for another year of leafy dress. 2 continents away, a 40-mile convoy of armored trucks stalled in unison, greedy to penetrate a capital city that not 2 weeks ago populated itself with people awaiting their next spring, a chance to shed the heavy, cold, wet nights.
Now those nights are filled with embers, blasts big enough, red enough to douse whatever hope was had for the new year. Whose war is this anyway? Whose spring? I called my response to Kathy's poem Sister Cities because so many US cities severed their sister city relationship with Russian cities after the invasion. So sister cities, whose spring, whose war? Here we planted a new word for spring, weaponize, a word I don't want to taste in my mouth. When did that appear? Daily, hourly, wherever you look, fear is weaponized. Water is weaponized. Tire irons weaponized. Words, always. Here, our spring promise of ranunculus, sky of water vapor, sky of smoke, sky of plumes, a 40-mile convoy stalled, headlights and taillights, rifle barrels whip apart, a push, a threat, a smack. There, even the roads are weaponized, not our hearts. Never let it be our hearts. There, hearts are strewn on the road like spent bullets. When do we learn that there contains here? Okay, I'll switch gears now and come a little closer to home and talk about my cats. Bill just mentioned we have 4. This is a poem before there were 4. It's about a favorite scarf and a favorite cat who loved that scarf. It's called The Scarf. You might think it's serviceable at best, worn acrylic in loud shades of turquoise, a few small holes, but it's soft and I've had it for a long time. Once I used it as a blanket at the AMC on Kurtner, watching Princess Bride with Cassie, buttery popcorn dropped and lost in the folds. Another time, I fought the crowd back down the aisle to my seat on the airplane. The scarf had fallen behind a backpack in the overhead compartment. I should have swaddled our old cat in it when she died. It did cross my mind. She loved that scarf. Whenever she lay on it, I imagined it held a pool of my scent and she'd sought it out. She loved me. But I couldn't bring myself to say goodbye to the cat and the scarf on the same day. Maybe you didn't love her enough, a voice hissed inside my head as the vet slid the needle under the loose skin of her neck. I convinced myself, no one will know you didn't bury her in it. Instead, I wrapped her still warm body in an old hand towel to catch what seeped out. Once on the beach in Half Moon Bay, a rogue wave swept our son off his four-year-old feet. I outran my friend, the sprinter, adrenaline propelling me across the sand. Somehow I reached him before the next wave. I wound the scarf around his drenched body, wiping away salt water, the scarf a blue tongue licking his face over and over. So some of you know that I recently resigned from my teaching job. I loved teaching, I loved the students, but it's just so much more than curriculum and what you're teaching, and the job just got too stressful for me because of all the things teachers are expected to do these days. I actually wrote this next poem that I'm going to read. I think David is going to show part of it for you. I actually wrote it during the previous school year, which was also very challenging for me. So it's addressed to our country as a whole because of how education is handled here. It's called Dispatch from the Classroom. Listen with me, O citizens, to the boy who never takes off his hoodie. Hear his loud moaning and intermittent shrieks. Lived between small desks, life is precarious. I stagger, I sway, my nerves fray like eraser rubbings. Flick me pink onto the floor. Don't bother calling the front office for help. I'm on my own with 20 small bodies who need help gripping the pencil, spelling Taiwan, Vietnam, Mexico, the home country they love. Hold up the globe for me while the boy who never takes off his hoodie groans and vocalizes his own atonal array of scrapes and staccato. 3 students cover their ears. I'm in need of a second warm body in the classroom, someone to help the boy who never takes off his hoodie while I teach place value. We remind him how to request a break, how to earn his stickers. His desperate efforts ricochet off bookshelves and bulletin boards. I reach deep into my chest cavity where there's a wall, where there's a tunnel. Its walls already dank by 11 a.m. Over the boys moaning, I teach them 75% of Earth's surface is covered by water. When they ask when lunch is, citizens, tell them, you know it's hard to learn when your stomach is growling. Give them fruit leather, let them chew. At the same time, teach them double-digit subtraction. At the same time, help me help the girl who is tardy every day. She cannot tell letters from numbers. Citizens, she cannot write her own name. I stand abandoned by the admins with their designer lapels and the 2 sides of their mouths. What I experience is called stress. What I have is called anxiety. At the same time, citizens, the word of the week is grit. I sit at the small desk in the small chair next to the boy who never takes off his hoodie. His needs push him far into the cold, dark cave of missing taxpayer money and excuses. At times, I cannot see the light or the charcoal drawing on the wall. It may be an aurochs or perhaps a mountain lion. The boy who never takes off his hoodie wants his gold star. I give him my spleen. The students call out my name because they too are lost in the cave. Meanwhile, they unpeel the layers of my patience like an onion. Their knives slice me. Perhaps I make them cry. I lie chopped on the board. They ask for a pencil sharpener. I give them my lungs. They ask how to spell perseverance. I give them the space between my ribs. They ask for more paper. I turn over my arm, expose my inner elbow, my veins, my skin. I say, help yourselves. Thank you. I think I'm probably at time, right, Phyllis?
You can do one more.
Yeah, okay. I have a short one here. It's oh, good. I'll do
mute
this
you
one.
again.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
If I don't mute you again.
That's okay. So, yeah, getting back to this wonderful series being called Poets and Conversation. So I'll close with another bit of influence from Erin. I took a wonderful workshop from her on the sonnet, the wonderful sonnet. So flexible and malleable. We all love it. And the poet Kim Adonisio came up with a form she calls the sononisio. And I was introduced to that by Erin. So this is my sononisio. The thing, it has some similarities to the sonnet. The main thing is that one word or a form of that word gets repeated on each of the 14 lines. So this is called judo demonstration. The first thing they teach you is how to fall. Fall with control, roll, slap your hand against the mat, discharging energy. Fallen, I recall the world tilting as I fell for you, like darkness falling, or the land falling sharply down toward the river, pushed into that stream again. Recurrent fall night, autumn's chill falling the length of time, the whole 27 years of it. Falling prey to whatever in me falls silent when we talk and I fall to listening. Not my fault or yours. It's both of us here now. We follow our pattern till it changes. Shoulders fall, Kiss the mat with tenderness. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Renee. Wow. There were a lot of wows in the chat.
Oh,
When
that's
you get a
nice.
chance, yeah.
Thank
You
you.
can see, yeah. So Erin, why don't you join us? And I'm going to read some of what's in here. Wow, Renee, all the poems are amazing. The final lines, you're getting a lot of kudos for your last lines, Renee.
Yay.
Yay, we worked so hard on those, right?
We do, don't we?
That was from Adela, and Nancy Murphy says that was amazing. Everybody's got some wows. Let's see. Fred is thanking you.
Yeah, Fred also picked up on those final lines, those good lines.
Thank you.
He did, Erin. Yeah. So, well, all of these poems are so much beauty and so much. You cover so much ground. And I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about this, the one that you wrote for the boy with the hoodie.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you come up with that idea to change the A's for fours and the O's for zeros?
I don't know. I was very, very stressed. I had just started a leave of absence that ended up getting extended, just stress, because this was a student who was in need of testing for special ed. And he, they kept telling me, oh, he's number 14 on the list or whatever. So it was just a very stressful classroom situation. And I finally, had to go on a leave of absence. And I remember sitting on the couch, just like, I don't know, it's probably the one poem I've ever composed on the computer. And I think probably it was a typo, might have started with a typo. And then I thought, oh, that looks interesting. I probably just went with it that way. Mm-hmm. That's vaguely how I remember it starting.
Yeah.
But a lot of your students, right, would like flip letters or have struggle with certain letters and numbers.
Right. Yeah. So at that time I was teaching second grade, and a lot of kids do that. They don't necessarily have to have a learning disability or anything. It's just like learning how to write, especially after a year of distance learning. So you're right. The using numbers in the place of letters also is picking up on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Erin, how long has it been since you've been a classroom teacher? Has it been quite a while? Or?
Oh, yes. A while.
But you were also an inspiration to me. I mean, sharing all of your materials and your experience when I went into teaching, because I only lasted 7 years. But so I knew you already when I was starting the teacher training program. And
that was a journey.
It was a journey. Yeah, the whole thing has been a journey. I still feel like a beginner teacher, and here I am having to take a step back. But that's just how it goes. It's a hard job.
Yeah. So let's see. So Kathleen says, love your poems. I love the closure of each of your poems. I picture each of them personally with your experiences.
And she would know. She is a colleague of mine teaching second grade.
Oh, okay.
So thank you, Kathleen, for that.
So you're speaking for,
She's taught much longer than me. So.
And Vicky says they lost a great teacher.
Oh, thank you.
And Sandy says, thank you for your poems and beautiful reading, Renee. I enjoyed the breadth of your topics. And also a former classroom teacher, I can fully relate to your teaching poem. And that is just that poem. I think it just really the emotion in there. And I want to talk to you both about the emotion in your poetry. But that one just was so full of it. When you started, not full of it that way, full of emotion.
I got you.
I turn my arm over and I say, here, here's my spleen, here's my, I mean, it's,
I think it's just that feeling at the end of the day, whether you're, tutoring someone or volunteering in the classroom or teaching or subbing or whatever it is, even helping your own child with their homework, it's draining, it's exhausting. And then, just the feeling of having to meet or trying to meet everybody's needs, and that it just creates a tension in you that it's hard to resolve. You can't really resolve it because the demands are too high. At least for me in the long term, they ended up being too high.
Yeah, I'm also really interested in the emotion in that poem, and because It's a good model for a poem that allows all the emotion to come up in us, the listeners and the readers, because the tone is so exhausted and flat. And for much of the poem, there's very short sentences. I sway, my nerves fray like eraser rubbings, flick me pink to the floor, right? And it's just, there's some similes, there's some language, but a lot of it is also just straight up description. We remind him to do this, he does that, this other girl does this other thing. And so that when we get to the end and the teacher starts saying, take my spleen, take the space between my ribs, here, just take everything. But it's still in that flat, just monotone. It's really affecting. It makes me feel the exhaustion. Really overwhelming emotional way.
That's really good points. Yeah. Cynthia, did you want to?
Yeah, it's funny you say flat, because I found it had so much tension in it. I was just like at the edge of my seat, really. And there's something about using those numbers in there that does so much work. It's sort of like, I know you said it was maybe a mistake, but to me, it reminded me of like, modern sort of slang, the way people creatively use language with slang and symbols and, texting maybe, but also a sort of a teacher at the end of her rope does everything she can to like, maybe like, how creative can we get with this? So it was doing a lot of work, whether you intended that or not, I thought.
Well, I thank you for that. I think by the end of it, when I was actively using it in the poem, and I think I'd limited myself to three vowels, then it was certainly intentional. But I think when it first happened, I just can't remember exactly how it happened. It wasn't like I got an idea, oh, I think I'll substitute, some numbers for letters. I think it started as a typo, and then I went, oh, that's interesting. So,
Yeah,
for the reasons that you're talking about. Yeah.
It just made me think of what, teachers with so few resources and how much they can do with few resources, right? And so here you're doing this kind of like limiting of the resources of the poem or something, I don't know.
Right, like we're out of pens, we have to use crayons. Oh, we're out of vowels, we better use numbers.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. Yeah.
That's a really good point. Let me just say, Dorinda is writing about the cat, the poem about the cat and the scarf.
Yeah.
And then after that, I think we're gonna introduce Erin. But she says, and rescuing the child that brought tears to her eyes, the scarf as the cat's tongue, so powerful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's another one that's filled with emotion too. Yeah, and I think in immersing myself more in both of your poems, some of your poems, I felt that way about Erin's poetry as well. So when you're reading, we can listen for that, Erin.
Yeah, and the scarf poem, I've read it many times now, but every time the speaker out sprints her sprinter friend, it gets me. There's something in Renée's poems, they're so embodied that I just feel so much. There's the maid's young body singing the song of the hot iron, and there's like feeling and emotion entering like people's corsets and things. Like it's just it's like I feel like it's almost vibrational. If we have time at the end, I would love to hear, Renée, like when you compose, are you actually feeling the poem in your body as you compose? I'd be really curious about that.
Great. That's a great question. Yeah, let's hold on to that.
Thank you for those comments, Erin.
Yeah. And now I'm going to introduce you, Erin, and let me see. So I am quite in ecstasy to have Erin Redfern here with us. Her work has appeared most recently in Hopkins Review, New Ohio Review, Massachusetts Review, Rattle, and North American Review, where it was a 2020 runner-up for the James Hurst Prize. She is co-recipient of the 2016 Robert H. Winter Memorial Award, given by the Poetry Society of America. And was that the one where they brought you to New York? Yeah. Okay. Let's see. And has served as poetry judge for the San Francisco Unified School District's Arts Festival. Erin was a fellow at the Searle Center for Teaching Excellence at Northwestern University and has over 20 years of classroom experience. She currently teaches writing. She teaches as a tutor. I think maybe writing. No, teaches. Oh, okay. Yeah. She currently teaches writing as a tutor, workshop leader, and editor. And her website is erinredfern.org, and we'll put that in the chat. So I'm going to hand things over to you, Erin.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for hosting, Phyllis. I think there's, and also you have Len and David helping us put this all together. So much work behind the scenes. It's so much more work than it seems from the outside. So I really appreciate it. And I know you get an extremely well-deserved break after this. And I'm really glad Renee and I got in under the wire for the summer. So thank you. Are you going to read another of your poems, Phyllis? No? Okay. All right.
I am at the end. So, but yeah.
You are at the end.
But not during your reading. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. There's a poem of yours that I feel, some of our poems I feel like are in conversation. So,
which one was that?
It was.
Oh, if that's not putting you on the spot.
No, it's not. Prepare to be wrong about everything.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I could read that one too, but yeah, that's a little dark. Yeah.
Well, that's where we go. Us poets, we go dark.
I noticed that. All right. Well, let's see where we go tonight.
Well, on that note, since I just said that, I'll actually start with what I feel like is a lighter poem, maybe just to spell us all. And let's see, I know some people are really visual and hearing can be challenging. So I'm going to try to put a Google Doc in there just in case anyone wants to click on that and actually go look at the words as I write. You're welcome to do that. If it even works. I'm not a millennial. I don't know. So I'm going to start reading a sonnet called Portrait of My Mother with Sailor Mouth. And Cynthia saw this one born. Oh, so Cynthia saw this was like, I don't know, 2.5, 3-page poem that I whittled down to a sonnet. And my mom's a wonderful, gracious, very polite, proper person, you need to know. So here goes. Portrait of my mother with sailor mouth. Her gorgeous cursing woke my greed for words stretched on rhythm's rack. Goddamn son of a bitch. Spondy. Coriam, towel she wrung and snapped at whatever bother raised its mole-blind head. Stubbed toes, stubborn lids, invoked the cretic whip of Jesus H. fucking Christ. She swore in manual transmission like she drove. Tempo of my brain, breath, lines. Let others write in auto iambic. I still hear her thumball drumming the steering wheel through another morning carpool. Was a time she'd buckle me in the car seat and we'd sing, You Are My Sunshine in a round. So she gave me too, my first canon, first metaphor. That one, I don't know if I wrote that before or after. I was interviewed on the Hive Poetry Collective. That's a Santa Cruz institution you should definitely check out if you haven't already. And was asked, what are my influences? And later I realized, oh, I should have said, this great poet, everybody. Like, it was a literary question. And I went on about the soundtrack to this 80s movie, Hoosiers, this basketball movie. I just went on about it because I was maybe 11 or 12 when that movie came out, and it's got all these basketball games in the movie. I mean, it's like watching a big long basketball game. And the soundtrack was music designed to sound like basketball. So when the team was on offense, you heard a lot of drums because they were dribbling. If they stopped dribbling and started passing, the drums would disappear. And so it was the first time in my life I understood that form and meaning were very tightly intertwined and could have a huge effect on a listener. And a lot of my influences are like that, especially if you don't grow up in an academic household or a heavily literary household. We have influences that we don't acknowledge sometimes, in part because they're not male and published and famous. So let's see, and then I'm going to read a little tiny snippet of this excerpt from William Stafford. He's writing an essay on poetry, and he writes about tradition and influence being very, very early in our lives. And he basically says, his mother and some of the things she said, these little down home country sayings, are some of his strongest influences. But that literary influence, I can claim, is not all honorific. It does not come from emulation of a recognized model, but from helpless involvement in the mean feelings of a person so much like me that my style is my plight as a human being. That just blew me away, right? Like my voice is the voice of a person so much like me that my style is my plight. So I love that idea of influence, that actually we don't have to try for it. It's just kind of with us. Oh my gosh, Phyllis, my students are going to laugh. I didn't start the clock. So you just wave dramatically when I'm out of time. I'll go to another poem.
Yeah, you're at about 6 minutes.
Oh, thanks. Okay. All right. I did some math. I got it. All right. And I think next, I want to make sure I get this one in. David, if you could show the image of the group photo, that would be great. Thank you. And I'm going to put, just in case anybody's curious, I'm putting the website. This comes from in the chat. So, and this isn't a book that was, it's a brand new book, very recently published, called my microphone's in the way, called New Voices, Contemporary Writers Confronting the Holocaust. And this has poetry, essays, nonfiction. It's got amazing people in here. Those of you who are a fan of Ellen Bass, Ellen has a poem in here. Jacqueline Oshro has a poem in here. Other famous people I'm blanking on because I'm nervous. But this is a new, and it's designed with its own curriculum. So especially if you have any acquaintances who teach writing, who teach Holocaust literature, they should absolutely write in and get a free instructor's copy of this book. So for this book, poets were sent an image and assigned that image to write a poem about without knowing what it was. So I got this picture and was just, this is not quite what you expect when you agree to a project about the Holocaust. I had no idea what was going on. I did a ton of research to figure this out. And it's from a photo album of a Nazi officer that one of the Allied soldiers found at the end of World War II. So kept this album. And so these are, you can correct my pronunciation, right? These are in German, Helferinnen, the female workers, of the Holocaust, who were really instrumental in making sure trains got places, people got where they needed to go. So when I say train, we're talking about materials to kill people that will be killed. They are organizing the logistics of the Holocaust. They're in this picture with a few officers, and they are at what's basically a resort. It's a summer camp. It was built by forced labor of Jewish prisoners, and it's relatively close to Auschwitz. So I wrote this poem in the summer I wrote it. California was having so many fires, and fires could be really far away in other parts of the state. And the air here would be blanketed with smoke. Smoke was on, ash was on everything. And I thought, oh my God, they're in this resort, but it's probably ash. It's just, and then how do you write about this? How do you possibly write about this group of happy Nazis? How do you do it without scolding without saying what we all know, that what they did was horrible. It was really, really challenging to try to come up with something interesting enough. So the poem I wrote is called Rain from a Blue Sky, which is an English translation of what the officer wrote on the back of this picture in his album. I don't know how to say it, Renee. Regen aus heiterem Himmel, right? Rain from a blue sky. Okay, so here goes. Rain from a blue sky. Oh, and you can, yeah. Okay, David's got that little, it's okay if you want to make the picture really big, David. Tell me, mother, who is the prettiest girl? That was me, daughter, during the war. And mother, tell me, who are your friends? The Helferinnen who sent and received messages. Oh, mother, how could you? How could you be singing? We sang constantly, our lungs charred and stinging. Mother, what did you do when the officer wooed you? I let him tipple me into the future. Dear one, that's you. And what made these stains on your mouth and hands? Blueberries, my daughter, wild, coated with ash. My own mother, what did you do when you wanted to weep? Daughter, look closer. The bright sky wept for us. And what did you do when the storm clouds came? We laughed and outran their heavenly strafe. Mother, who made this place so pleasant and safe? They made it, whose hands bloom under black earth. Thank you so much, David. So that was my imagining, right? That after the war, a lot of people, weren't obviously instrumental, and they must have walked out of some door someday and just started living their after lives, which included children. And how do you explain to your child this picture if this is you in this picture? Learning about this and reading Timothy Snyder's book, Black Earth, about the Holocaust, which is an incredible read, really helped me understand that there are not some people so bad they could be Nazis. It made me realize that would have been me if I'd been in the right place at the right time, in the right culture, with the right upbringing. These were all just normal people. I try to remember that now in America, but it's tricky. but really, it was really an education, and I was grateful for that experience. And is that, let's see, so we're at 17 minus 6 is 11. Okay, so one more poem, right, Phyllis? Time for? Okay, let's see what I want to do.
You can do 2 more.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll get
your poems. Yeah.
I'll focus. Okay, so David, can you do the other picture? Thank you, and you can make it really big. People don't need to, they can just hear me. Yeah, perfect. So this is so a few years ago, before 2016, when I was still on Facebook, I didn't rage quit Facebook. My mom posts on Facebook, and this was a Throwback Thursday she did. And she was like, she's very trendy and kind of ahead of the game. Something I did not inherit. And so she posted this picture and said, look, I was taking selfies, before anybody was taking selfies. She's 15, it's 1960. But there's a lot of context to this poem. And so that's what I wrote about. This poem is called Her Father's Heart as Brownie Starlet. And the Brownie Starlet is the kind of camera she was using. My mother's dad is in the clouds. No, he's in the sea. JFK is on a plane. No, he's on TV. He was in the Navy once. This is the base in San Diego. It is July 1960. She is 15. JFK is on TV. This is the base. Her shirt is white cotton. A salt wind lifts the shining darkness of her hair. She sights into noon like a pilot. Her father's is not here as clouds blown inland from sea to desert air. He crashed. He was captured. No, drowned. This is his drowned heart heavy in her hand. No, it's her Kodak brownie starlet. She holds and turns it toward her, looking past its lens. The photo will be black and white and square and far away as JFK. She will send it to herself, where she is, with him underneath the waves. Her mother's gone too. No, she's pinning her hair to attend a service for a body that's not there. The Civil Air Patrol is looking for her. No, it's looking for him. Where's my mother's house? Her bed, her little brother. She is his mother now. No, she needs a mother. So let's the Dacon lens look after her. In the photo, JFK will be there with his arm around her shoulder. No, only bare sky and bleached wood siding. Her dark eyes narrowed against the sun and the brownie starlet looking. In 6 months, she will have a new father. No, she will have a new president, handsome like her father. In 60 years, she will be sifting the sky for contrails. Hello, Daddy, she will say, or sometimes, hello, Mama. She was captured. No, she drowned. No, she's breathing salt air thick with ocean. She is here at the base. JFK is on TV. My mother's dad is in the clouds. No, he is in the sea. Thanks for listening. Someone asked me if that was a villanelle, which it's not, but what a smart question, because like a villanelle or a pontoon, the poem is circular and keeps going back and repeating and getting nowhere. So it feels like a villanelle because it's stuck, and it's stuck in grief. And I was trying to capture some of the confusion of grief, especially if someone's young and there's huge tragedy and it's never talked about, and it's just there. So that's that poem. Let's see. And
so I think you have time for 2 more, actually.
more. Okay, well, I'll try one, and then you can like give me a green or a red light. We'll be Simon Says.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I know I'm like heavy with the, let's see, I'm gonna get another little did I do that right? Yeah, okay. So this is my one and only poem I have ever been able to write based on a news story. I have lots of friends. Renee is among them, and Phyllis is among them, who can write poems based on current events and what's happening, but I try and I just fail except for this. This poem is about a team of women scientists who discovered some teeth from these medieval teeth, and they were women's teeth, and they had lapis lazuli embedded in the calculus, or the fossilized. Our teeth in our jaw are the only parts of us that become fossilized while we're still living. So they found this lapis lazuli in the jaw, and these scientists are running around like, how could it get there? Was she just cleaning the room, and all this dust from the pigment makers was in the air and she breathed it in? Or, oh, was she like kissing a devotional book every day of her life, 20 million times? How did this get in her teeth? And none of that matches up with where it actually is, which is right in the front of the teeth, right where it would be if you were sucking the tip of your brush, your paintbrush, and then dipping it in the pigment. That's right where it is. And it took a multidisciplinary, like multi-continental team of women scientists to be like, wait a minute, maybe she was writing the book, so that just really impressed me. And I got to write this poem, and then I got really brave and sent it to the 3 women who are mentioned in the article I posted, and they were so excited. It really helped me understand the power that we have as poets have of helping our society and people in our society, or just people we know, hold their experience, the fullness of their experience, like not just what's in their head, but like, oh, this is why this matters. This is why this means something to me. Narrative does it too, but I think poets have a special way of just cutting right to the chase. So this is called The Artist. Oh, I think I was in Ellen Bass's class when I wrote this, and I just called it Artist. And Ellen is, so experienced. She goes like, The Artist. And I was like, oh, of course. Okay, so it's called The Artist. She kisses the bristles to a fine tip, dips her brush in cerulean dust, brings her skill to bear on the letter, its lobe soon gravid with blue. Blue pigment nestles in her teeth. Some calculus takes centuries to read. One historian guessed she was there to clean the room, or was she there to kiss the book? Let's ask her. Are you woman or master? If woman, votary of ink, with which I net the numinous. If master, the same. Bow to the body of the word, she prays, bowl, seraph, ligature, head, until she too is illuminated. And that's a sonnet, but a really sonnet where I mess around a lot with the rhyme scheme and the structure, and insert the writer's voice, the medieval writer's voice in there.
So, you know what, Erin, as much as I want to hear more, I think that's a perfect place.
Fair.
Yeah, it's just gorgeous. Yeah. Let's just express our appreciation and gratitude. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Wow.
you.
Erin,
Just-
Renee, wow.
Way to go.
Really.
Both of you are teachers and mentors to me. It's so important. What a wonderful, wonderful conversation this has been. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. So let's see if anybody does want to break the ice again. I know we've already had somebody speak, and have any comments or questions that you want to ask. Of course, I have plenty of questions, and Renee and Erin and I can talk, but I'm also wondering what other people who are here, who've experienced this amazing reading, might want to ask. Or does anybody want to? Angie?
Oh, thank you. I can't find the raise your hand.
Go ahead. Yeah, I saw your hand. That's perfect. Yeah.
But I just really wanted to thank both of you for reading us those amazing poems. They were so beautiful, and I love the conversation really among the three of you. But I also really want to thank you, Erin, for that last poem, and that you were brave to send the poem to the three women who were so appreciative, because I often feel like, wait, why am I doing this? It just seems like, oh my God, the world's falling apart.
Is anybody even listening? Yeah.
Yeah.
Including me.
So thank you.
It was so exciting. I thought I'd get crickets, and separately they all responded, and they shared it with their graduate students to inspire them. And then when they wrote up the actual paper, they put the sonnet in their scientific report. So now all these scientists have to read the sonnet, and I just love that. So thanks, Angie.
Wow, that's really great. Thanks, Angie. Yeah. Anyone else?
I just wanted to say that was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic, and I'm so sorry I missed Renee's. We have a big summer solstice here in Santa Barbara, and I couldn't get home with the traffic. But my question is, I'm absolutely in awe of the research you did for each of those poems I heard. How much time did you put in the research? Let's say for the photograph of, the mother in with the happy Nazis, that first one. what an expression, right? I mean, how can you say something about your research?
I did like weeks, at least weeks, because I was shocked that I was asked, because I'm not a big name poet, and I knew there were going to be big poets, and I was like, oh my God, I've got to bring like my A++ game. And this is not the appropriate response to that, but my my dysfunctional pattern is like, well, I better learn everything there is to know about everything so that I can be ready to start the poem, you know? So I did way too much research. But yeah, weeks and weeks of it. Yeah. And I had many poems too. Renée helped me pick this one. I was down to 2 poems, and Renée had this amazing insight that only, you know, somebody who has a PhD and did work in Germany would know. There's no one else I know who could have told me that it actually sounds like German fairy tales and the dialogue that happens in German fairy tales. So even though it was simpler and more direct, I went with that one. So I'm forever grateful to Renée to like have pulled me back from the edge of my more like, you know, self-consciously lyrical poem.
A wonderful poem. And the thing that grabbed me was that it seems to be echoing, or seems to be in conversation with, a poem by Goethe, a very famous poem called the Erlking, or the Erlkönig, which is the king of the elves talking to his son. And there's that same question and answer response. There's also a catechism feel to it, right? And question and response. So I just think it just feels very of that time in a way, as well as of our time. It's a really successful poem.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think they knew exactly what they were doing when they asked you to.
And you are a big name poet.
Yes. Oh, goodness. Well, let me see. Oh, there's so much here in the chat too.
And I still want to know, Renée, about like how you are when you write poems. If it's something, if you also, because of your musician background, if you hear them as like, if you hear them almost as scores, or if you're listening, or how you.
I wish I did. That'd be cool. No, I mean, I think like a lot of poets, a phrase might come to mind, or I always think of it as a gift when you get a line, or something sounds good, you write it down before you forget. At least that's me. What you were asking before about the issue of the body, or this embodiment of poems. For me, some of the first poems I started writing, 10, 11, 12 years ago were about not so much Beethoven's music or even him as a person, as the effect that the music has on me, on my body. I mean, so much of it is passionate, and I do feel like your blood starts going, and it's like, oh my God, I just can't believe the audio sensations I get, like in my ear, and yes, in the body too, when I listen to certain pieces. And that's what I meant when I said, you just can't just turn it off. There's certain, especially the piano sonatas. I was fortunate enough last Friday, so my friend Mariette is here. She and her husband Todd took John and me to the San Francisco Symphony, and it was an all Beethoven program, and we were all just gaga. It was so good. The Fifth Piano Concerto and the Third Symphony, 2 of my very, very favorites. So that was amazing. Also the Appassionata Sonata, whenever I hear that, it's called passionate for a reason. It just has a lot of emotion, sexual energy, all kinds of energy. There are a number of different movements of mostly the piano sonatas, because I think those are among his most intimate statements that have that effect.
Do you listen to Beethoven while you write, or to anything while you write?
No, I don't listen to anything. I need quiet, man. I got the earplugs in. I listen to Beethoven in the car. So it's like this journey aspect. And I don't like anybody else to be in the car with me. If I have, whoever's in the car with me, I don't put on the Beethoven. It's like this private thing. So
wow,
that's just me. Yeah.
That makes me want to do that. That's great.
Yeah, I think because it's Beethoven is, for me, not like ambient music. Wouldn't be just because you have to listen, right? It can't just be in the background for me. I can put lots of other kinds of music on in the background, but Beethoven wants to be listened to.
So shall we talk a little more about the emotion, how you get emotion into poetry? I know.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Erin about that.
Yeah. So yeah, you were saying some of it is sometimes it could be partly form and also the length of the lines, maybe the line breaks. I mean, that's just the beginning of it. I put together a few of the lines that made me feel a lot from the poems that you read. So the no poem, Renee, when you talk about the the nose would ring out a shawl, a rebozo, a silk sari. I am tongue-tied tonight. A silk sari and a torn skirt. So that torn skirt just like knocked me right here. So I thought that it carried so much emotion in it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of writing is just the rhythm, first of all, and then building up. You know, figuring out the order of things. Like I wouldn't have started that little list with the torn skirt. You know, I think you just figure out what order things should be in.
It was perfect to end with it, right? And that, yeah.
Well, and it sets up a pattern of beautiful clothing. 1, 2, 3, and then this torn skirt undermines the list that came before. Right. So the orders.
And I don't think that things like that are not like intentional. I think you notice it afterward. I probably didn't even notice it till you guys noticed it.
Right. I find that too, right?
I feel like I'm ignorant on so many things, but my subconscious is so smart. My subconscious is really wise.
Or your ear, right? Your ear.
Maybe it's the ear. Yeah. Or they're connected. Yeah.
And the stanza after that one, you're listing places, but there's Amarillo, Pueblo, Mexico, nowhere, Angola. That just like long O also comes in over and over again. So even as you're repeating no, we're hearing the vowel over. So that insistence too, I think, brings emotion to that poem.
Yeah, that's another thing I hadn't really noticed. Thank you for noticing it.
And the resonance of women saying no, it's just very, it is very emotional. And the anger and the sadness that we feel about it. Then what about coming back to that whalebone? Harmonies thrust their way into the whalebone of her corset. Harmonies thrust their way.
I'm sorry, it's very sexual music.
I know.
That's just.
Well, I wasn't going to be the one to say that, but it's great.
Yeah.
Let's see. So then, Erin, this line. This is his drowned heart heavy in her hand. Geez, I mean, that just stopped me. It stops me every time. Yeah.
A lot of the images in Erin's poem just stop me because they are so, I want to say like cleverly wrought, and I don't mean clever like that, just like original, like, oh my God, I never thought of it that way. But then you immediately recognize it. Right? I mean, there's a quote from Robert Frost who talks about images or poems being like that, something that you recognize but you hadn't heard before, something like that. I'm paraphrasing terribly.
Oh, that's my favorite feeling when I'm reading a poem and I'm like, oh, I didn't know I wanted to express that, but now I know I want to, and someone already did, and it's here. It's
right. Yes, I had that feeling. Your portrait of my mother with Sailor Mouth, the gorgeous cursing and the words stretched on rhythm's rack. I mean, that's like 3 different images packed in together. And it's so rewarding to think about that. I mean, the rhythm, that is part of the satisfaction of swearing, right? It is, because it's like, and that's why it's so Anglo-Saxon, right? We don't swear in Latin. It's really Latinate words. But then the idea of it being a rack, you know, this idea of torment, it really captures something. And I think that's the thing if I had to name one thing I admire about your poems the most, it's that the way your original use of language captures something, and even difficult things are made beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks. It's why we do it, right? To just get to approach what we wish we could say, even though we can't ever. Do
Mhm.
it. You get
You
this.
you get pretty close sometimes, Erin.
Well,
Mhm.
we
I
work
think you
hard,
do
us,
too,
us,
Renee.
all of us. Yeah, everybody here, right?
Yeah.
We've tinkered, we've
Right.
revised.
Mhm.
Yeah. I was puzzled when you were like, oh, it just came out in that order. That never happens to me. I'm never like, oh, my subconscious just knew what to know.
Oh,
Like
really?
everything comes out a mess. And I know, Renee, I've heard you say that you hear the last line of a poem sometimes, and then the struggle is writing to the last. I never have gotten a lot. I always have to fight for that last line and get it wrong a lot, and have people tell me to tone it down a lot because I go for the, like Fat Lady Sings ending, and it's ridiculous. And
That's fascinating. Wow.
because
So,
you have good end lines too, Phyllis. That's why I'm so intrigued.
oh, well, thanks. Yeah, I never hear the end until I get there. That's so interesting. Yeah, I wonder if other writers here would like to talk about that. Like, when you're writing, if you're whatever you're writing, how does that work for you? Does it come out from your subconscious and then you're like, well, wow, where did that come from? And wow, or is it more like what Erin's saying, it all comes out a mess? Or do you hear the end? Or I don't know if does anybody want to comment on that? I think that's just fascinating. Nancy, yeah.
I think all of the above. First of all, this has been fabulous. Some of these poems are really going to haunt me in a good way. But I always say sometimes the ending is 3 lines back. I have a tendency to want to wrap it up and sum it up and make sure it's really finished. And then I go back and realize that another line covers then, and I think the last line should really leave a residue and even sing a little away. And I think a lot of this work really did that, and it just leaves you with that feeling and all the emotion of it. And I have a pet peeve about writers that read so fast that they kind of swallow their last line, and I'm always so hungry for that ending. So anyway,
And they didn't do that at all, did they? Yeah.
No, they landed
Yeah,
perfectly.
landed perfect.
Classroom teachers, sometimes we know stuff.
Yeah.
The teacher, right? It
Well
reminds me
done.
of acrobats, like Simone Biles landing that
Yeah, it's important. But thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. Anybody else want to talk about that process? Like, yeah, Vicky, yeah.
Oh, well, I'm so grateful to be invited to this. It's so fulfilling, so
And you're
wonderful seeing you.
welcome to come back anytime too.
I'm not a prolific poet. A few of my best poetry it just flowed through me, and it was like, and I didn't edit it. I didn't have to change a thing, maybe a couple of little things, and they were like the best. And out of all my poetry, there's only like 3 that really stand out to me. And it's almost like a God thing. It's like, where did that come from? Did I write that? I mean, it just came. And I wish that would happen like every day. I wish
Right.
I don't know how to sit down. I have a million lines. A million dreams, and I can't make them into anything. I don't know how to work a poem. I don't know how to force a poem. It has to come through me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, nobody can force a poem.
Yeah.
You can't do it. Like, wouldn't we all like bottle that, Vicky? Well, you'll be a bazillionaire.
Well, I see people that just seem like they, Ellen Bass is somebody that just, her poetry just seems to come, maybe
she
not.
works really hard.
If she works really hard.
Oh no, she edits a lot. Yeah. Yeah, one of the things we were thinking of doing today that then I thought maybe we wouldn't have enough time was to show you all a poem. Erin had mentioned this, show you a poem at the start and then how it ended up, and talk about the editing process. Because, poems that sound just, like they just float out of you sometimes. I don't know. I think my friend Richard Forster probably, I don't know, he counts the number of times he edits, and I think he's gotten up to like 25. I don't know, but maybe there's people who do more than that, but
That's a little bit what I was talking
Lightweight.
about with the poem for Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles. I started off, I wanted to force it. This thing was gonna be a sonanizio, because God damn it, I was gonna write one of those things. And I had a first line, because with the sonanizio, you take a line from someone else's poem. That's your starting one, a sonnet. And I had this line from Shakespeare. And then I tried to write using the repeated word face. And like, oh boy, this is really, really bad. So I tried something else, just like free verse, free write. And it still just wasn't going anywhere. And I guess I let a little time go by, not too much. And then I was just, writing whatever in the notebook, and suddenly it was about no, and I just kept going with that. So it can be like different versions that have, like, you start with the same idea, the same topic, but you go in a different direction until you finally find the right direction. But that other one, the last one that I wrote, the judo demonstration that I said what finally was a sonanizio, even though it didn't start with somebody else's line, it started with my own line, that I finally was able to write to it after, like, Vicky, I'm thinking of you. You say you have a lot of lines, a lot of first lines. I had that first line. I loved that thing. I carried it with me for 6 or 7 years. I tried to write on it at Poets at Play. That turned out, didn't work out. And I just thought, this is a great first line, right? The first thing they teach you is how to fall. It's beautiful. It's iambic. It's got the right number of syllables. It's great. I love it, but it's not going anywhere. And then I finally found the door in Erin's workshop, her introducing us to this new form. Sometimes it's just like going in the back way, like they say, and now it's a poem I really like. I feel like it said something that I didn't know I needed to say,
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
We can feel that. Yeah.
Whereas like with the
discovery.
other poems, like when you're setting out to say something, I wanted to say like, go Naomi Osaka, withdraw from the stupid press conferences, but it doesn't. It's like you were talking a little bit with the Nazi poem with that photograph of the Helferin, and it's like, how do you you can't always hit the subject face on. And if you try and it's just not what you want to say, it's not good poetry, it's not working, and you try again, front on, or whatever, trying to attack it, and it just doesn't work until you find some way in. And it might take weeks and weeks, like you said, with your research. It might take many different iterations of like starting from scratch. And I don't mean like version 2 of the same poem.
No,
I mean,
like
starting
scratch.
from scratch, like blank piece of paper.
Years to write
That
poems.
hurts.
Often.
Yeah.
Erin, and Vicky, the poems that have just come to me, I'm like, oh, what a blessing. Like, oh, thank you, poetry, spirits, for that. I was channeling it. And the other day I went back and I'm like, I've got to get rid of some of these journals, because they're taking up too much space. Like, I get rid of them. I started looking through one and I saw all these failed versions of a poem that just came that I'd forgotten about. I was like, oh, I was trying to write this for about 7, 8, 9 years, forgot about it. And then when it finally came, so all those failed poems, I do think they are essential. I don't think we can have those incredible experiences of flow if we don't, do the footwork quite a bit, which I know you do, Vicky.
So Vicky, you're asking about whether when you edit a poem, do you keep each version? Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, because you just never know if you're going to want to go back and look at it. Like, and what Erin is saying, it's important, I think. I don't know what both of you think about that.
Yeah, I keep all the versions. And I would find it really, really hard to get rid of an actual notebook, but I probably don't have as many as you.
Yeah, I have them on the computer, so it compresses it. But Erin, do you want to say more? You were saying that you write a lot, just sort of a big thing just comes out and then you have to edit it down from there. Is that often how
and Vuong just said, cannibalize your own writing.
Your old ideas.
Keep everything and cannibalize old ideas. Yeah, thank you, Vuong. That's really cool. Yeah, really good advice.
I think it's just that I'm really a kind of an uptight, anxious person and really achievement oriented for most of my younger life. And so now if I'm to get anywhere and not be stuck, I've got to just be able to write stuff that sounds bad. And I know a lot of people say that, but it's really hard for me to do. And I'm not a prolific writer at all. Like when you introduce people at readings, it sounds like they're just churning out like this brilliant poem a week, but it is not. Like I haven't written a poem I liked in like at least half a year, everybody. So, like
Same.
these are older. They've been, I have to wait for them to get published, and took forever for these to get even published. So
well, that's true too. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it is pretty much a hot mess. And I'm teetering on the brink of throwing it all away and just trusting that some part of my unconscious is doing the work and is keeping what needs to be kept and will come to me when I need it. I'm pretty close to taking the leap, you guys. Throwing all the journals out.
Wow.
Oh boy. Yeah. Well, yeah.
That's like
Still-
extreme Marie Kondo.
Len says, don't
EMK.
do it. Yeah.
Vicky wants to say.
Oh, Vicky. Yeah, please.
Just real quick, I've been going through old journals, like I had 20 years of journals, and I've been going through old journals and reading all of them by year, reading them. And then I have a notebook, and if there's something I really like, I rewrite it in the notebook, and the journal gets tossed. And so
I've done that
that's a
too.
good
pushing
idea.
it down,
Mhm.
but
Good
I'm not
tip.
writing any poetry, so
Mhm.
I also think there are times when it's fallow, it's like an empty field that has to regenerate. Erin was saying she hasn't written something she likes in half a year. I've put pen to paper, I can say that, but I haven't written anything. And I know it's because the teaching poem said, I just giving everything to the classroom, everything to the kids. And I get home, there's just nothing left. Like you have to have some kind of freshness, I think, to write anything. And if it's not there, it's not there. You need a rest.
Yeah. Yeah. I just finished up 2 rounds of 8 weeks of he called it boot camp. If I had known that, I might not have signed up, but it was really amazing, wonderful. And I actually had the experience of forcing myself to write something when I did not want to write. I did not know what I wanted to write about. And I was really mad that I was even forcing myself to do it. Like, why? Just because the teacher said I should, right? But it turned out well, so it was kind of painful, but it turned out, I think I got a poem out of it. And I had to go back and figure out why I was writing it. So that was really unusual for me, because usually I start off with an idea like, this is why I want to write this, because otherwise I feel like I don't have something I want to say. That's kind of the door for me, is what do I want to say? So this time I just didn't know what I wanted to say. There was an assignment, write imagery. And I just didn't. So I was just writing imagery. It was like, whoa, what do I care about? So then I had to go back and figure out, why do I care about this? And then a door opened on that. So that was, but I'm not sure. I don't know that I want to be in that space, where I'm feeling like I have to write, because that's another, that can be, you need a break from that anyway, I think.
The pressure, the self-imposed pressure to write, to produce, to be productive. It's leftover, at least for me, from grad school, of being productive.
Yeah. Well, let me look and see if there's anything else in the chat.
Jade wanted to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, just a quick note that
Jade,
I think what I've learned from both of you, there's so many things, so valuable, but that sometimes when stuff is kicking around and it's been there a long time in a lot of different ways, that to give it, to put it to form. For instance, the sonnet is such a good way, because you have to, each and every word is so important. Everything has to be just exactly where you're going. It helps you define what you want to do. You might not ultimately leave it in that form, but it's such a good way to get there. We should never dismiss that. And I credit both of you with showing us that over and over again. I mean, it's just.
Thank you, Jade. I also want to stress the importance of having a group or more than one group, writing groups that you share your work with, because you might not know where the poem is going, and somebody else can at least tell you what they're getting out of it and maybe give you another way in, tell you at least it's like holding up a mirror, and they reflect back what they're getting from it. And it might be completely different from what you had in mind. And that's valuable information too.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to read my closing poem, and then we'll finish up the official recording part of the reading. And I think what I'm going to go with, as much as I would like to read that Holocaust poem, Erin, because I think it just fit really well with yours. I think I'm going to go with this one because it's about music, and also it's in my book, and also I sent this poem to the person that I'm writing to, who lives in Thailand, and we had a little correspondence about it, which was really, really fun. Then I sent him my book, and he wrote me an email. He says, "Who are you? I got this book. I don't know." So he kind of forgot, that we had talked about it. But anyway, it was really cool connecting with him. So, and if you want to see, he has a YouTube channel. His name is Paul Barton, and Barton, and you can watch videos of what my poem is about. So it's Paul Barton Plays Piano for Elephants. The piano, fountainhead to a congregation of elephants, sick, abused, retired, a man's hand skimming the keys. Animals stop, listen, flap ears, reach trunks around to sniff aura of the instrument, aspect of the man. Elephants straggling about, free now, shielded. The piano sitting on the dirt in a park, surrounded. Picture it, man playing Bach to a teacher large enough to kill him, stomp up his keyboard. The elephant stands transfixed. The man gives bananas at first to make a good impression, helps to memorize his smell, connect him to the sounds. He walks with a group sometimes, the blind ones. Even if they knew where the piano once got its keys, what would they do? Crush it? This cruel, splendid coincidence, this moonlight sonata under the stars, these behemoths swaying. So
That might be my favorite one in your book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. And everything you read, both of you, is my favorite. I love all of your poems so much. So I will be back in October, at the end of October, with two amazing poets. And I hope everybody has a wonderful summer and early fall. And we'll see you then.